Hello everyone, welcome back warrior students. Today is time for Wars of the Lich King Arms Warrior Guide Update number 3, and in this video we are going to talk about stats, simulations and itemization. Now the purpose of this video is to teach you guys how you want to build your character, like what talents you want to go for and when, and why, and what your stats will provide you in terms of damage and why, so that you're always able to basically build your character. Because yeah, if you get gear, it's most of the time, or a lot of the time, it's not really the gear that you was putting in your biz list or that you're aiming for in your biz list, and therefore you want to be able to make the best out of every given situation all the time. So if you think that you know everything about stats, and if you think you know everything about the talents or the gear or whatever, you can use the timestamps in the video description to maneuver through the chapters. So let's go. Alright, so let's talk about talents. So first up, you want to improve your rend, and then you have a choice if you want to go for deflection. If you see yourself pulling threat from time to time on trash packs, I would recommend deflection. Or if you don't see yourself using heroic strike a whole lot, again, you should consider deflection instead of heroic strike, because a parry is a big deal. If you pull threat and you get a parry, this is a big deal. You survive longer and you deal more damage because of parry haste. Then obviously we have our weapon specializations. Axe is going to be on top, but it ultimately depends on the best weapon that you have available. And then we need to see if we need to pick up trauma or not. If you have a bear tank, you don't need to pick up trauma. If you have a feathered cat, you want to pick up trauma, and make sure that the cat knows that he doesn't or she doesn't need to mangle. Now, then obviously those are all pretty much locked in place here. And then we have our next choice, and this is, do we want to go for inside, which is good in AoE more than in single target, but still has some benefits in single target, or do we want to go for commanding presence and maybe some improvements to our execute? Now this build here is always going to be superior if you don't have a paladin that has an improved blessing of might. In this case, you always want to go for commanding presence. Or if you think that the extra HP from your commanding shout will make a difference, then you want to go obviously for commanding presence. But if you don't think that's the case, or if you have an improved blessing of might, then inside is better. Like I said, it's more valuable in AoE, but in single target it still grants you some DPS over the improved execute. And then you want to think about how many points do you want to invest into improved mortal strike. Like for me, there are two options basically. One option is you get 2 out of 3 into improved mortal strike. This has one benefit. First of all, you invest 1 skill point less, so you could go for more expertise, and therefore you can gear for more crit or strength or whatever you want to. And the next benefit that is not really that obvious, I'm going to show you right now. So you can see I have 2 points into improved mortal strike, and this means that it has pretty much 5.5 seconds of cooldown. Overpower only triggers a 1 second global. This means that if you use overpower in your mortal strike CD cycle, your rotation is going to be relatively smooth. Now let me show this one to you. So we use mortal strike, we use 1 slam, we use another slam, we use 1 overpower, and then we can cast mortal strike. The problem with 3 out of 3 into improved mortal strike is that each mortal strike cycle we have to make a choice. Do we want to do nothing basically for 1 second so that we can cast our mortal strike right away when it's off cooldown again? Or do we want to delay mortal strike for 0.5 seconds every mortal strike cycle? Now, to be forced in this decision making for me, feels really awful, and therefore I'm going to try the 2 out of 3 points into improved Mortal Strike first. At the same time, keeping Mortal Strike on cooldown when it has only 5 seconds of CD is extremely rage intensive, and I can see myself not having enough rage to actually do so, which would result in holes in the rotation, rage starving and things like this, and this is as well something that I would like to avoid. So how would you play this build if you have full bis gear? By the way, this would be the gear that I would be aiming for as my bis. You would want to prioritize Mortal Strike over Slam while you're in Bloodlust. You would prioritize Mortal Strike over Slam if you don't have a 4-set proc, but you would prioritize Slam over Mortal Strike if your 4-set is active, which is a little bit complicated. I'm pretty sure that I'm just going to cast Mortal Strike and cooldown and try to make a smooth rotation, but if you want to be really precise, then you prioritize Slam over MS when your 4-set proc is active. So before I'm going to tell you what stat is going to be the best one for tier 7, I want you to understand something. So the way that your stats work in World of Warcraft, by the way, if you think you know all this, you can skip ahead using the timestamps, but for everyone else, if you don't know how the stats work at World of Warcraft, so if you get 1 crit and then you get another crit and then you get 1 more crit, every point of crit gave you the same amount of extra damage. Depending that there is nothing that scales with like crit or something, like you're just having your character doing white hits with his weapon, and you add 1 crit, you add another crit, you add a 3rd point of crit. Every point of crit you add will give you the same amount of damage until you're on 100% crit rate. Then obviously crit doesn't provide anything anymore. If you would add 1 point of crit, then 1 point of strength, 1 point of crit, 1 point of strength, then every point of crit that you add after you added a point of strength will give you more DPS, because they work together, they work better than they work alone, basically. Alright, so to illustrate this a little bit better, we are going to take a look at Hans. So Hans is a fictional character and he is a fighter. He has a 2-handed sword. The sword is really shitty, but it has 3.4 seconds attack speed, and Hans has 99% crit. Like, what the fuck? So, but his sword, like I said, isn't really that good, so he only has 10 weapon damage. Now if we add 46 crit rating, Hans gets 1% crit, which equals 1% extra damage in this case. But if we add 46 strength, 46 strength is going to be 92 attack power, and therefore equals 23.92 weapon damage. So we basically more than tripled Hans' DPS output because we went for strength in this situation instead of crit. So, same thing goes for armor penetration. The armor penetration gets stronger the more you have, but if you have a lot of armor penetration but nothing else, then it doesn't help you either. This is why early armor penetration builds don't really work, because you need to sacrifice too much to get to a level where armor penetration is good, and because you sacrificed so much strength, because of this, your armor penetration isn't really worth anything. And then one thing that we want to consider is that armor penetration will give you a percentage based increase. Same goes for crit and haste pretty much. And strength or attack power works a little bit different. So first of all, your weapon will give you some weapon damage. For example, on this Betrayer of Humanity, we have like 910 top end. And every 100 strength we get will add 26 on top of this. So the better your weapon, the worse your strength compares to maybe crit or armor penetration or haste or whatever. Because yeah, you get a new item with tier 8, there will be more strength on it. The weapon that you get will have a higher base top end, and therefore all of a sudden armor penetration becomes a lot better. Now crit is obviously extremely strong for Arms Warrior. Like the multiplier for crit is not double the damage. For Arms Warrior it's like 2.569 something. Like you because you have so much extra crit damage. You have 20% extra crit damage here, you have 5% extra crit damage here, and you have your meta gem for another 3% extra crit damage. In addition, every time we crit, we apply deep wounds. Now the reason why strength is going to be better than crit on tier 7, in my opinion, or at least from what my calculations suggested, is because you already get a lot of crit for free. You get 10% from your talents. You get 5% from leader of the pack or whatever buff. You get some agility here. You get some agility from your Horn of Winter or this Strength of Earth Totem. You get some crit percentages here. So you already have so much crit just from nothing, basically for free, that in a way this situation here comes to mind, right? We already have so much crit for free that strength is more valuable because we are early in the expansion. The weapons we have basically suck, or like they don't suck, but they're really bad compared to like the very high-end weapon from tier 9 or tier 10, and therefore strength is better than crit. However, if you would calculate your stats on this website, like if I would add a crit gem instead of the strength gem here, I would gain some DPS. But if we look at the damage contribution, we can see that Rend is not dealing enough damage. Like it deals less than half the damage that it should per cast, and it deals way less DPS than it should. Like this is like 2% or something like this, 2 point something percent, but in reality it should deal like almost 10%. And I studied some footage from the beta and from back in the day, and I tested the same on the private server, and they all said the same. Like those numbers for Rend, they are not realistic. They are far too small. And here's the thing, Rend scales very good with strength, but Rend scales not at all with crit and not at all with armor penetration. And because of this, if you use this simulation website here, crit and armor penetration will perform better than they should. And you only get a very, very small amount of extra damage if you add crit instead of strength. And therefore, I'm pretty sure that my calculations are still true. So when you're level 80 and you get your first gear pieces and whatnot, you can just look at how much damage is Rend doing, how much percent of your overall damage is Rend in a single target. And then you know if like GitHub is correct and you should go for crit, or if I'm correct and you want to go for strength. So yeah, this is at least what I'm going to do as soon as I'm like level 80 or what. And yeah. Alright, let's get to the last part of the video where we take a look at some biz lists and we talk about itemization. So you can make those biz lists all you want, or those item lists, but in reality not a lot of people will be able to get all the items on those lists, and therefore it's far more important that you understand how your stats work and what caps you need to aim for, so that you can make the best out of every given situation. This simulation software is a great help, but like I said, I'm not trusting this one 100% right now, but it's pretty accurate. Let's put it at that. Now, this is my pre-raid biz list, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to be able to get all of the pieces here, but in case you don't know, 8% is the hit cap that you want to have if you fight against bosses, 7% if you are Alliance and you have a Draenei in your raid, and expertise is 6.5% parry and dodge reduction. This gets reduced by 1% for each point you put into weapon mastery. So weapon mastery has an impact on your gearing, so as strength of arms. Because if you want to compare two items, and let's say one has strength and one has attack power, yes, strength times 2 equals attack power. However, strength gets multiplied by strength of arms, 4%, and by your Blessing of Kings by 10%. So it's always a little bit more. You want to keep that in mind. As a general rule of thumb, if you have two items, the items that has just more raw stats, like more strength or more crit or whatever, combined is the better option. For example, strength, or I think that strength is going to be my best stat. But still, in this tier 7 shoulder piece here, I use the orange gem to get the 4 crits socket bonus, because 12 crit is more valuable than 8 strength. So I have brought 3 different sets of items that are like built with tier 7 items here, and this one is the one that I think will perform the best. It's focused on strength. This one is focused on armor penetration, and this one is focused on crit chance. So if you throw them into the calculator here, they are really close to each other in terms of their performance. Like it's like 50 DPS or so. Even though all of those 3 sets focus on an entire different stat as their main priority. And this is because all of those 3 sets have a relatively similar amount of just war stats. And as long as your set makes sense, as long as you don't overcap your caps, as long as you use the right talents and drive the right rotation, as long as you aim for a very high amount of raw stats, you're going to be fine. Now, the armor penetration set performs the worst. The crit and the strength one are almost equal. One little side note that you want to consider is that as long as you don't have a lot of armor penetration, like if you're gimping on like 200 or what, armor penetration is really, really bad. Like, don't take it for like the same amount like crit would do or anything. It's more like on a level that is comparable to haste. It's even a little bit below that. So yeah, armor penetration, unless it comes in big numbers, if like for example on this trinket here, which gives you like 600 immediately, which pushes you into a range where armor penetration is really worth something, you want to basically avoid armor penetration. Try to focus on crit and strength. So as always, I hope you guys learned something, or at least this video was entertaining to watch. And until the next one, which will probably be something about rotation again, no more hard-on number crushing anymore, stay tuned and take care.